Never say what you mean, all I hear is steam. And never say that to me, never say that to me. Or wipe that shit off your face, let's not stop till we bleed. The more you spit out your mouth, the less I believe.
Hey, it's our first book report or book review here. I can read. I can. So I got this book. I got the Kindle edition, and it's available in paperback or Kindle. It's How to Ride Off-Road Motorcycles by Gary LaPlante, or LaPlante. I don't really know how to pronounce it. But I wanted to go over this book because I think it's really good. And now that it's winter time here, maybe you want something to curl up with to prepare your mind over the next few weeks or months here till it gets warm again and you get back to riding regular. Now, some people got to start riding dirt bikes when they were little kids or a teenager and have lots of experience from that. Other people, like myself, started much, much later in life, and you're kind of trying to play catch up a little bit. So things like classes and videos online can help. I think classes are really good, but also there's some really good books out there that I've been looking over, and this is one of them. After you get down basic control of the motorcycle, so you're not crashing every 5 minutes or scaring yourself half to death, you want to develop your technique. The number one way, of course, is riding experience or seat time, but you want to make sure that you're developing good habits. I mean, sometimes we figure out how to do things on the trail that maybe are, not the best way, or there's an easier, more efficient way to do it, but, we don't have anybody there to tell us. And not everybody can take a class. So that's why I think, a book like this is structured really well, because it starts off with the basics and goes through to more advanced things as you move through the book. All right, whenever you take a class from someone or watch their video or read their book, a question that comes to mind is, who is this dude? Does he know what he's doing? Is he full of shit? Why should I listen to him? This is the author, Gary LaPlante. I'm just going to pronounce it LaPlante. Gary was a trials champion. He also was a factory rider for Kawasaki and Honda. Did a lot of work in product development of like the KDX and KX motocross bikes. Also holds a number of FIM world records at the time. Very experienced, and he's been teaching or training since 1998. He runs a school called Moto Ventures, and it's an off-road training school for all levels of rider. So the book is essentially, their curriculum put down in book form. All right, so I think the way I'll do this is I'll just briefly describe each chapter. Now, I will say that whether you're experienced or not, you should read the book start to finish. There's probably something you're doing wrong or could do better. That's a very basic thing that would be covered in the earlier chapters. Now, the basic structure of the book is it's like, builds upon the previous chapter. And in each chapter, there's photos for everything that they're talking about, and like a written, tutorial kind of step-by-step of how to do the things. And then it's foundational, so each chapter builds on the previous chapter's lessons, which is nice. And it's well organized as far as how it goes from foundational things to more advanced things. At the end of each chapter, there'll be like advanced exercises concerning whatever topic that particular chapter was about. And Gary's really good about pointing out like when something is an advanced technique, more hazardous, like shit not to do to avoid a crash. So you kind of get a good feel of like, based on the description of it, like if you're ready for that or not. All right, so let's just run through the chapters here briefly. Chapters 1 through 3 are new rider advice, beginner's first steps, and foundation building. You should read these. it talks about fundamental things to know about the motorcycle, controls, positioning, things like that. And definitely everything else in the book follows based upon those first 3 chapters. So even if you're very experienced, don't skip it. Like I said earlier, there's probably something in those first 3 chapters that you can improve upon. Chapter 4 is body positioning. Talks about the standard position, also position of rest when you're standing on the bike. Goes into detail about elbows, shoulders, upper body, what your legs are doing, what your feet are doing, all that kind of stuff. Chapter 5 is all about braking. That's a pretty important topic. I found personally, as I developed better throttle control and had some classes where like I had to do maximum braking on dirt, my confidence improved because if I felt like I could slow myself down or stop myself, I was less nervous about doing things. Chapter 6 gets into turning and basic turns, seated turns, standing turns, turns in different conditions, into more advanced types of turns like flat turns and things like that, almost like a flat track style. Chapter 7, throttle control, very good chapter. It talks about using the throttle in a variety of situations, different types of terrains, different riding situations you'll encounter. Chapter 8 is all about hill climbs. That's a pretty awesome chapter there. Chapter 9 is about my nemesis, downhills. There's some really great information in that on how to conquer downhills and proper technique and body position, use of the brakes, things like that. All right, Chapter 10, which I cut off at the top, is about turning on hills and side hills, like going up a slope and making a turn on the hill and coming back down. So like proper body position and waiting while you're doing that so you don't fall off the bike or slide down the hill. Chapter 11 goes in depth into steering while standing up in a variety of situations, how to use your body, your shoulders, everything to maneuver the bike. Chapter 12 covers wheelies because later on it gets into doing wheelies as part of general riding techniques when you encounter certain obstacles. Chapter 13 is about how to ride whoops. Chapter 14 gets into jumping, small jumps and then also big jumps. Chapter 15 is kind of fun. Talks about doing brake slides and sliding the rear of the bike around. And it covers things like pivot turns and popping a wheelie to pull the bike around and change direction, things like that. All right, Chapter 16 goes into different types of terrain and conditions, like sand, mud, covers snow and ice, what to do on routes, logs, all that kind of stuff, obstacles, different ways to attack obstacles. It's a really good chapter. Chapter 17 is about riding etiquette and responsibilities. Now, some of this is like, the law of the trail, as we say, like, waiting up for people. Like if the trail splits into a Y, wait for the guy behind you so that he doesn't get lost. But also about, not being a dick out there and like littering and stuff like that. Chapter 18, prepping your bike for rides, maintenance, general maintenance things to look over. Chapter 19 talks about transitioning from dirt bike riding to street riding. Gary's a big believer that you should learn to ride on a dirt bike before you ride on the street. Chapter 20 gets into some motocross specific techniques. And Chapter 21, Gary gets into trials techniques, some of the basic trials techniques for getting over like large obstacles and things like that. And that's pretty, more advanced type stuff there, which is why it's last in the book, I believe. All right, so are there any things in this book that are retarded or negative? I would say not. It's very well organized from the fundamentals on through more advanced techniques. It's very clear and easy to understand with the photos and everything. The only thing is that some of the body position things might be a matter of preference or opinion, in that he recommends that you keep your ankles and your boots in contact with the bike, but ride slightly bow-legged. Now, it depends. Motocross guys will recommend against that, generally speaking, to keep your knees and everything pressed into the tank. However, I've watched instructional videos from like Billy Bolt and Graham Jarvis, who are hard enduro kings, and they always talk about in very technical sections or rocky sections or things like that to, yes, do that. Keep your legs away from the bike to let the bike move underneath you. So some of those things might just be style or preference. It's not really a negative. I would say go ahead and do it the way Gary teaches you, because these are like tried and true techniques. And then as you get more advanced, you can, do something a little different depending on your situation. All right, so what's the best way to use this book? I would read it cover to cover. You don't have to read it in one sitting, but I would read through the entire book so you understand what he's talking about. And also in each chapter, there's additional information from people like Cody Webb and other top writers who contribute. But read it start to finish. Make sure you've got your fundamentals down right, because just like any other sport, it's like the basics, the fundamentals that need to be strong before you can advance. And then I would, as you get into the more like the middle and more advanced chapters, I would write like a cue card or something of like the basic thing, like the steps to do the technique. And, we go out and we trail ride with our friends and stuff, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. But, I took a class one time, and the instructor was saying when you're out trail riding with your friends, you're improving, but very slowly, because everyone's generally riding, inside their comfort zone or just outside of it, but you're not really practicing. And he compared it to like a sports team. Like the sports team has practices during the week to perfect their fundamentals and technique. And then on the weekend, that's when they play the game. You could kind of look at motorcycling, because it is a sport, in the same way. So, I mean, if you can practice in your yard or whatever, practice some of these techniques, that'd be great. If you can't, maybe you want to get together with a couple of the guys you ride with and see if they're interested in like just spending like the first hour of like your ride, like go to a hill and practice the techniques for a hill climb. Just do that hill for like an hour or something, or until everyone passes out from the heat or whatever. But something like that, I think, will let you get, a lot out of this book. Because you gotta read it, understand it, and then you've got to practice it and make sure you're doing it right. And then from there, you can move on to even more advanced things. But it's a really good book, and it's definitely worth buying. Definitely a good read. Lots of good information. And I'll put a link down in the description to where I got it on Amazon. Like I said, you can get a hard copy of it, or you can get the Kindle edition. I like the Kindle edition because you can download it to like your iPad or your phone. So if you wanted to take it with you on the trail, if you're having a practice session, you could like read it out loud to everybody in your group, and then go ahead and try it. All right, well, that's about it. I'll talk to you later.